those who are able to rise for military honors. If you are currently serving in the military or have been honorably discharged, you may perform the hand salute. Thank you. You may be seated.
On behalf of the President of the United States Navy, and a grateful country, please accept this flag in devotion for your loved one's honorable service to our country.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Shalom. I'm Rabbi Joshua Caruso from Anshe Chesed Fairmount Temple. It's my honor today to guide our beloved Jerry Kramer to his final resting place. And I know it is your honor as well to pay him tribute today. There's some tears and there's some grief, but certainly there's some happy memories. of his life. And of course, his good friend Chris will speak to that soon. I'll share some remarks as well. We'll begin with some words of prayer and blessing. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for dancing, a time for wailing, a time for birthing and a time for dying, a time for speaking and a time for silence, a time for seeking, a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. But we begin our service with the recitation of some psalms and prayers, thus linking Jerome's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you to join with me now for the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. There's a reading that I think speaks to the heart and speaks to how we understand death and those who we've remembered. It's the sensory things that connect us to our loved one even when they're gone. Perhaps an article of clothing or a song we may hear, a scent that we may enjoy, memories, visual memories and pictures, certainly that we have of Jerry. And so this prayer perhaps speaks to that idea of even in loss, we are still able to remember our loved ones. Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there, I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sunlight on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn's rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft star that shines at night. Do not stand at my grave, at my casket, and cry. I am not there. I did not die. I'd like to invite Jerry's very good friend, Chris, who has basically become like family, was like family to him, and we'll share some words.
Thank you very much. What a moment. So there were these two Jewish women having tea one day, and they were talking about their garden. And one says to the other, "How's the garden doing?" She goes, "It's okay." "What's the problem?" She says, the tomatoes, they don't ripen." "Don't you know the secret?" "There's a secret? What's the secret?" She says, "You have to go out into the garden and flash the tomatoes, and they will ripen." "Really?" So later that evening, the woman slipped out of the bed next to her husband. Out into the garden she went with her robe, and she flashed the tomatoes. A week later, the women were having tea again and talking about the garden. "How's the garden?" She says, "It's okay. What's the problem? The tomatoes didn't ripen?" She says, "No, I did everything you told me to do, but the tomatoes did not ripen. But you should see the cucumbers. That's a Jerry joke. That is a Jerry joke. He loved them. Had plenty of them. You know, I met Jerry because of our mutual affection for vintage Cadillacs. Jerry had his famed 55 Eldorado, and I was a man known by my collection of 56 Cadillacs. And I was an executive of the Cadillac LaSalle Club, Collectors Club, doing big events around the city and, you know, car cruises and all these things. And here would come the Birdman. And they warned me about him 25 years ago. He's a nice, crazy guy with a great car, but, you know, he's got a lot of unusual options in the car. We'll just leave it at that. Okay, fine. So when he would arrive with his 55 Cadillac, of course, you know, the Birdman stickers were all over that fine car. He had a full mannequin of Mayor White dressed in the back seat, and on the opposite side of the seat would be Elvis. And then there was the front legs of a man up into the grill with the arms of the man being the wiper blades. It was quite a configuration. And Jerry was always clad in the Birdman jacket and hat, as he is today. He would come into these places, and the officials of the show would say, "What do we do with him? It's a beautiful car, but it's not quite something we want to put on display. There's nothing wrong with it." And Jerry wanted an audience. As you know, Jerry loved an audience. He and I share that in common. So they'd put him in the back. He wanted to be in the front. And Jerry would be, as you know, Jerry could contest things. And he could be testy if it wasn't his way. And so he would be out there, but he would immediately, he didn't care about the car. He cared about the children. Immediately he would go after the kids, take out the little deck of cards and his quarters and his little pocket tricks and entertain the kids and do bird whistles and things to keep the children amused. The children didn't care about old vintage Cadillacs. They liked the tricks. They liked the Birdman. And the Birdman really created a legacy about doing that. Jerry would be in parades with his cars, you know, without apology. No, props were all there. You know, Mayor White would I told him, put a safety belt on him at least. But he'd be out there with his cars in all the parades, loved the parades. Loved that. You know, he had other silly cars. I don't know if you remember the one Chevrolet he had that had the half of a woman's torso hanging out of the trunk with the sign that read "Mother-in-law in trunk." Only Jerry Kramer, the Birdman, could do that. You know, and he could do that without a sense of reservation at all. And as he told me many times as we became friends, because I understood him. I understood his comedy and his wit. He coveted his relationship with Jackie Mason, loved telling me all about his trips to Miami and Vegas and finding the best places to go. And, you know, he enjoyed my showbiz career as Peacock. How's that? Peacock and the Birdman. So the ironies were just incredible. And Jerry would live kind of vicariously through my performances and what have you in the live auction business. But when he would be out there with these cars, he would always say to me, you know, many times, "It's a good thing my father, my strict Russian father, made those investments and bought that land and built those buildings," because he said, "I never had to work a day in my life." And he said, "The hardest job I ever had was retirement." And so the blessings with Jerry was that he could get out. He could be independent. He answered to nobody short of his God. And he had fun with the world. And that was inspirational, as it should continue to be to all of us. Finding fun, having fun, and moving the needle of life just a little more. He loved this stuff. So we would go to those car shows. He would like my collection. He would always come over and marvel over my collection of unusual cars. And together we bonded. And I knew his life, his lifestyle, and would be there to help him when I could. So he was always good with his jokes. And of course, even in his last couple of years in the nursing home, I would visit him weekly under the great advice of his dear friend, Mary Ann Minute. I would go there, and the nursing home could be 95 degrees in that ward. He's wearing his Birdman jacket and hat. And there's Birdman outside his door and Birdman everywhere. He loved and believed in his brand, his brand of life and his brand of being Birdman. And he would profess it at every corner and cause. And everybody in that nursing home, even those with the greatest degrees of dementia, knew the Birdman. They knew the Birdman. So he was, of course, never married at all, but he once told me there was a man and his wife standing in line at the bank. And the man and his wife were waiting for the teller, and in walked the bank robber. And the bank robber conducted a robbery. They were scared. And the robber turned to the first man in line and said, "Did you just see what happened?" And the man said, "Yes." And he shot him dead right there on the spot. Horror. The robber said to the next person in line, "Did you see what happened?" "Well, yes." Bang! Shot him dead on the spot. Well, the third man with his wife was standing there, and the third man said, "I didn't see a thing, but my wife saw it all." Another Jerry joke. He loved them. He loved them, and he remembered them. And I'd recite them back to him once in a while just to jog his memory and to get him going. And he knew the punchline. He always, with his, with visitors and people, he was always congenial. He was fun. He always found the fun in somebody or in a situation. Again, he didn't have to prove himself or answer to anybody. So he liked the fun of the situation. And for those who were so serious, he was not interested. And if anything, he'd go cross the line a little bit just to irritate them and not to leave. But he was generous. Oh, he loved to be picked up and taken out and go to Corky's and Lenny's and stir with the community and to go to a new restaurant. He didn't really want to be home much. He was a man of community. He wanted to be out in the community, and his vehicle was the car, befittingly the Bahama blue car with the chrome. So he was a legend. He touched many hearts, and I really appreciate the times with him. Again, I say thank you to Mary Ann Minute, and who really, really was at his side and put up with a lot. You did great things. Angelo, what you did to Jerry's house. For those of you who hadn't seen Jerry's house nor driven by, do it. It's the nicest house on the street, thanks to the talents of this man. Totally restored from top to bottom, and has a new, happy set of owners in it, and life's going on. And whatever happened to that blue Eldorado? A new collector has it and is giving it a full restoration after we get the legs off of it and the arms. And Mayor White out of the back. I remember when the buyer came along and said, "What do I do with this in the back seat?" And I said, "Well, you could change it. You put a little beard on him. It could be, it could be Mary Jackson if you want to, update it, whatever." But it's gone to a great home, and it's going to be fully restored. The legacy of Jerry certainly lives on. So we're very, very honored to that, and I so enjoyed his friendship. So there was a funeral of the richest man in town. And the richest man in town, this stranger's looking over, and he saw this woman crying loudly. And the stranger went over to the woman and said, "Are you a relative of the deceased?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Well, then why are you crying?" And she said, "That's why." She wasn't a relative of the deceased. Jerry's now in another good place. But I will tell you, he declined his golden angel wings for a pair of chrome Cadillac fins. The Birdman, well, he can still soar with the freedom of a bird. And I'm grateful for that. I say thanks be to God for having a sense of humor. Amen.
Thank you, Chris. For sure. One of the things that obviously was a hallmark for Jerry was his one-liners. Probably said these jokes time and again. There were probably people who heard them many, many, many times again. But sometimes there are great quips, great maxims great jokes that you can hear over and over again. They don't get old, and somehow if they are old, the person telling them is so endearing that you don't mind hearing them again. Judaism also has its maxims, has its aphorisms that it shares over and over again. And we've heard them, and many of you may have heard them before, but we say them over and over again because they have meaning, they have deep meaning. And so there are many lasting maxims repeated throughout the generations in Judaism. And the great rabbis of 2 millennia ago left an impressive legacy of teachings that still hold up today. Jerry had his one-liners, and in honor of him, I will share some of Judaism's most apt aphorisms that pertain to his legacy. Rabbi Hillel used to say, "If I am not for me, who will be for me? And when I am for myself alone, what am I? And if not now, when?" In these concise words holds a lifetime of wisdom that Jerry practiced with great success. He demonstrated what it means to tend to one's own needs, or you won't be good for anyone else. That first part of the saying, if I am not for me, who will be for me? He used to quip, I wish I could love someone who could love me as much as I love me. And yet, as much as he focused on himself and his needs, he also really lived the second part of that aphorism. And when I am for myself alone, what am I? He understood that life should be lived among others. He was the undeniable self-appointed entertainer, charming the residents of Myers Apartments, Menorah Park, and other homes for the aged, and of course on parades and wherever he could just assemble a group sharing his Borscht Belt wit and impersonations. Yes, indeed, he lived for others. Even though he focused on himself, he was determined not to be a solitary figure. He was determined to live among others. And finally, that final part of that maxim, if not now, when? Jerry was a devoted follower of the saying, seize the moment. If not now, when? He would say, if you live in the past, you have no future. And be happy with what you've got. He was always looking towards the bright side of things. He once told Cleveland Jewish News reporter Violet Spivak, with all the tragic news coming out of Israel and the world in such sad shape, isn't it better to laugh? And laugh he did. Pirkei Avot, our great ethics from our sages, they asked, who is rich? And the rabbis answer, one who is comfortable with his lot. Jerry knew that money didn't buy happiness, but it sure gave him the ability to pursue his interests. He loved cars, even turning his 1990 Chevy Caprice into his Birdman special. He would get stopped regularly, so people would incur, policemen, whatever it may be, not necessarily to get him a ticket, but just to peer into the car. Who was this strange, eccentric individual driving this vehicle? So people could inquire about him, this funny guy with the eccentric items stationed in the back seat or hanging from the window of his car. He wanted that. He did it on purpose because he wanted the attention. He wanted the interactions. All the gimmicks afforded him the ability to meet others. I found on the web this blogger who wrote something for the Heights Observer. She wrote, Jerry is the type of person who is a friend to all. What's welcoming about him is a genuine concern for the well-being of others and respect for those who fight to be themselves, especially when the world hasn't been as kind as it could have been. A lot of people, they're all followers, Jerry said. All I hear is, I can't do that, or I can't do this. You see, they have nothing to offer to make it better. They just complain. That's their conversation, Jerry would say. And then the blogger wrote, so he drives around in his automobile smiling and enjoying those he helps to smile too. I feel like I have really lived, Jerry wrote. Jerry said, and I've really enjoyed it and still am, thank God. Indeed, this man lived life on his terms, in community, always engaging. It made him feel alive. It made him feel like he had purpose. There was a reason for why he was put on this earth. That reminds me of a great saying by Rabbi Simcha Bunim. He wrote, you shall live your life carrying 2 notes with you, one in each pocket. You put your hand in your pocket, the left pocket, and you open up the note, and the note should say, the world was created just for me. The rabbi meant to say that each one of us has an individual purpose in this world. We must do the best we can with it. We are unlike anybody else. And then you stick your hand in your right pocket, you open up the note, and it says, you are but dust and ashes. The idea, we are only here for a short while. And we must know when it's time to pass the torch on to another. This is a life, Judaism says, that's lived in balance. A life of understanding our importance in the world, what our job is to do, and yet not taking ourselves too seriously that when it's time to leave, we're not able to surrender. And today, he is ready to surrender. And we are ready to carry this legacy. You know, Jerry might have not known that particular those Jewish words and that Jewish rabbi, but he said, and I quote, you are only a temporary tenant on this earth, so make your stay a happy one. That's what Rabbi Simcha Bunim meant, taking every day as a gift. Singing your bird song, singing it loud, singing it clear, unmistakably you, authentically you. And that is what Jerry was, authentically Jerry Kramer, Birdman. May his memory forever be a blessing. And let us say, Amen. Going to ask that we take just a moment, and I'm sure we carry with us so many memories of him. And so in silence, let's maybe recall those memories, those visuals, the words he shared with us, the ones that we want to take with us after we leave this chapel, after we leave the graveside, those pieces of his life that brought joy to us in our world. We pause for a few moments. If you are able, I invite you now to please rise for the chanting of El Malei Rachamim, the memorial prayer. El Malei Rachamim, Shochein Bamromim, Hamsei Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShchina, במעלות קדושים מותרים, כזוהר רקיע מזהירים את נשמת ג'רי קריימר שהלך לעולמו, בגן עדן תהי מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים, הסתירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו, אדוני ונחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, Grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, to the delightful, happy soul of our beloved Jerome Kramer, who has gone to his eternal home. Merciful One, we ask that Jerry finds perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May his soul be bound up in the bond of life. May he rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. At this time, we conclude our service. We will be moving from this space to Mount Olive Cemetery for the graveside burial. And following that, you all will go into life carrying the memories of Jerry with you, and hopefully putting a smile on your face and a smile on so many others in this world. Again, may his memory be a blessing. Amen.